Above the vast expanse of deep space, at a height of several million zhang, three massive, small continents, each with a diameter of several thousand miles, were colliding from the east, west, and north at speeds of several hundred miles per breath. Three individuals were tasked with stopping these continents, and whether they could succeed became the focal point for the countless onlookers. However, this test was not meant to assess the skill levels of Lin Dong and his companions, but rather to examine their raw combat power in a direct confrontation. This was a contest of brute strength with little room for skillful maneuvers. Boom! The enormous Supreme Dharmakaya wielded a divine staff, and with a thunderous crash, it collided with the continent coming from the north. The impact produced a terrifying shockwave that poured out from the gaps between the two forces. The space itself was torn apart, leaving massive chasms that stretched for tens of thousands of zhang. Within each of these gaps were different scenes. A vast blue sea, a frozen wasteland, a fiery magma region, and even endless dark voids. On the ground below, countless people were filled with awe and fear, for they knew that the scenes unfolding in these spatial rifts were from other parts of the Great Thousand Worlds. In other words, these rifts led to places billions of miles away. The energy from this collision had actually opened multiple spatial passages to distant locations, underscoring just how terrifying the impact was. On another side, the sound of war drums echoed. Under the command of the Little Drum King, the Pagoda Divine Army unleashed over 80% of their power, an intimidating force to behold. The massive Black Tower also surged with power, colliding with the continent coming from the west. In that instant, a brilliant burst of light mixed with golden flames erupted, blinding most of the powerful figures present, making it impossible to see what was happening at the point of impact. Boom! At that moment, a huge and silent sound drew everyone's attention. This came from the elder with the crutch, who stood at the forefront. A massive section of space, hundreds of thousands of zhang across, collapsed in the northern expanse of deep space. The next scene left everyone even more astonished. The Supreme Dharmakaya used by the elder with the crutch, after colliding with the continent, only managed to hold for a brief moment before the enormous divine staff shattered under the tremendous force and exploded. Although nearly a third of the continent's impact was neutralized, the remaining two-thirds were still extremely terrifying. The effects of this would soon become apparent. Without the divine staff, the massive Supreme Dharmakaya could only use its hands to block. The elder, sitting cross-legged atop the Dharmakaya's head, urged it into action. Two enormous spiritual energy hands rose up, each several 100,000 zhang in size, though still small in comparison to the continent. Bang! Once again, the two forces collided, and large portions of space crumbled under the shockwave. The force was so overwhelming that the elder with the crutch, seated atop the Supreme Dharmakaya, coughed up blood at the moment of impact. The Dharmakaya's fingers were shattered. But then, the elder performed a surprising move. He made hand seals, a gesture only understood by the most powerful, as this was a death seal. The death seal was a technique that self-destructed the Supreme Dharmakaya. Boom! The shining light erupted from the Supreme Dharmakaya, almost covering the entire sky. Then, with a deafening explosion, an incredibly violent energy storm raged through the heavens. The power generated by a mid-tier Earth Supreme self-destructing their Supreme Dharmakaya was unimaginable. Would this energy be enough to stop the continent? Whoosh! From the center of the explosion, a disheveled figure shot out. It was the elder with the crutch, his face pale and his gaze fixed on the deep space above. The self-detonation of the Supreme Dharmakaya was his final move. If it failed, he would truly be powerless to stop the relic of the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. Countless eyes turned to the continent coming from the west, where the energy storm was gradually subsiding. The final result soon became clear. In the sky, the continent remained suspended, but its forward progress had been successfully halted. Its immense size, originally tens of thousands of miles in diameter, had shrunk by a third. The crutch elder successfully intercepted a continent, though at a great cost. However, if this could be exchanged for a relic map of the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign, it would still be worth it. Boom! At that moment, a deafening sound came from the eastern horizon. There, unlike the immense and powerful supreme Dharmakaya of the Crutch Elder, or the overwhelming battle intent of the Little Drum King, there was a continent shaking violently. On the edge of the continent stood a figure, Lin Dong. At this moment, Lin Dong was deeply embedded within the continent. No one knew what he intended to do by directly confronting a continent with his physical body, not even Xun'er Qian below. However, his brow furrowed in deep concern as he sensed that the power of the continent Lin Dong had blocked had doubled. Xun'er Qian's gaze shifted higher into the sky. He knew this was the work of someone from the True Dragon clan. What is that thing? A shocked exclamation spread among the crowd, and all eyes turned toward the continent Lin Dong was holding back. They saw the wave of brown-yellow energy emanating from Lin Dong's position, and wherever the wave passed, all rocks and soil turned to desolation. Heh, what a method! The leader of the True Dragon clan, hidden in the vast void high above, smiled faintly as he watched the continent below rapidly turning barren. But at this speed, it's not going to stop this continent. Boom. Lin Dong pressed both hands firmly against the continent, his face contorted in a grimace. The continent's power was beyond his expectations. Below, Elder Song, Fanling, and Fin Yunzi watched with tense expressions. It was no surprise that they were worried about Lin Dong. Qing Lingzhu also clenched her jade hand tightly, but she believed Lin Dong could pull it off. The enormous land hovered in the sky, with Lin Dong at its center. The area of desolation continued to expand. Hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles. As the desolation spread, the continent's impact weakened somewhat. Had it not been for the sudden surge in power, Lin Dong would have already stopped the continent, but as it was, the continent was still charging forward. The desolation soon covered nearly half of the continent, but the land still pushed forward. Its trajectory overlapped exactly with the continent controlled by the Little Drum King, which meant that neither of them could stop the land. If the two continents collided, a crash was inevitable. On the other side, the Little Drum King controlled the battle intent of the Pagoda Divine Army, continually reducing the continent's forward momentum. The first 3 layers of the Pagoda Divine Tower had completely shattered. Bang! The 4th layer of the Black Tower crumbled under the continent's crushing collision, and within a few breaths, the 5th layer shattered as well. However, the Little Drum King grinned. At this moment, the continent's advance had been stopped, but this wouldn't be enough to defeat the Crutch Elder. So, he had to act decisively. After halting the continent using the 5 layers of the Pagoda Divine Tower, the Little Drum King rammed the remaining 4 layers into the continent. This move irritated both Xun'er Qian and Xun'er Luo, who had led the Pagoda Divine Army earlier. After all, the Pagoda Divine Tower was the clan's guardian tower. Wasn't the Little Drum King's action a desecration? However, due to the Great Thousand Assembly, neither Xun'er Qian nor Xun'er Luo interfered with the Little Drum King. The Pagoda Divine Tower was forged by the battle intent of the Pagoda Divine Army, and though it was damaged, it could be rebuilt. The only concern was that this action could harm some of the Pagoda Divine Army's members, but that worry was soon dispelled. In the deep void, after the Little Drum King sent the Pagoda Divine Army flying, he quickly stowed his large drum, severing his connection with the army and the battle intent. He also cut off the faint connection between the Pagoda Divine Army and the shattered Black Tower. Normally, severing the link between the battle intent and its spirit would result in the disappearance of the battle intent, but there was enough time for this to be avoided. Boom! Before the Pagoda Divine Tower could dissipate, it collided with the continent that had now come to a halt. A terrifying explosion unleashed shockwaves that tore apart numerous space cracks. The continent's previous space collapsed entirely. That continent had been forcibly reduced by half in size, and this was the power carried by the last 4 layers of the Pagoda Divine Tower. Such an achievement surpassed even that of the Crutch Elder from before. In the air to the north, the Crutch Elder could only sigh helplessly as he watched the continent, half destroyed by the Little Drum King. It seemed that he was destined to be unable to reach the relics of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign. Boom! Just as everyone's attention was focused on the Little Drum King, who had destroyed half of the continent, a thunderous sound, shaking the very heavens and earth, echoed again from the eastern horizon. Upon hearing this, both the Little Drum King and the slightly disappointed Crutch Elder immediately turned their gaze toward Lin Dong, who was still battling on the continent. They saw that the continent, which Lin Dong had intercepted, was now mostly barren. However, the Little Drum King was not worried that Lin Dong would surpass him. Turning half of the continent barren was not a great achievement. After all, compared to the destruction he had caused to the entire continent, Lin Dong's feat seemed rather insignificant. However, the Crutch Elder smiled faintly and said to the Little Drum King, "Heh, Little Drum King, it seems you've lost. Old man, you really love to speak in reverse." The Little Drum King dismissed the Crutch Elder's words, for the situation at present made it clear that Lin Dong was not as powerful as he was. However, this thought began to slowly crumble in his mind. Boom! Suddenly, the tremors on Lin Dong's continent intensified, but the barren area stopped growing, and the continent ceased its movement. Lin Dong had successfully stopped the continent, which had doubled in power. Of course, only Xun'er, the true Dragon Clan leader, and a few other experts with strength at the mid-stage Heavenly Supreme level were aware of this. Where is Lin Dong? The powerful experts were puzzled when they saw that the continent had stopped. They couldn't find Lin Dong. Was it possible that he had been embedded within the continent and couldn't escape? But only true experts would not think this way. This kid is a bit unexpected. Xun'er stood on the ground and gazed at the continent to the east, speaking calmly. Roar. As soon as Xun'er's words fell, everyone heard a dragon's roar that reverberated across the heavens and earth. Immediately after, a powerful dragon's might emanated from within the continent, accompanied by a dazzling purple-gold light. Boom! In a certain part of the continent, a massive boulder was lifted, and from within the continent emerged a colossal purple-gold dragon claw. Upon seeing this, the Little Drum King's expression suddenly changed, while the Crutch Elder simply smiled. Then, another massive section of earth, tens of thousands of feet large, was torn from the ground, and another purple-gold dragon claw stretched out. The sight sent shivers down the spines of many, as if something terrifying was about to emerge from the continent. Soon, the enormous body, feared by all, finally broke through the surface, appearing before everyone. In that moment, even the true Dragon Clan leader narrowed his eyes. Boom! In the deep sky to the east, the immense continent hung suspended, and from it stretched a massive crack that reached millions of feet. From beneath the earth crawled a purple-gold giant dragon over 100,000 feet long. This was the golden dragon body transformed by Lin Dong using the Azure Sky Dragon transformation technique. How is this possible? Is this guy from the Dragon Clan? The Little Drum King's face was filled with shock as he stared at the purple-gold dragon emerging from the earth. However, he quickly realized something was wrong. Wait, this isn't a true dragon. This guy must have practiced some kind of dragon transformation technique. The Little Drum King's thoughts mirrored those of the other experts watching, but they knew that there were different levels to such dragon transformation techniques. The lowest level created a phantom dragon shape, a higher level allowed for the transformation of limbs into dragons, and an even higher level transformed the entire body into a dragon, but only with the aura of a dragon. The highest level was the complete transformation into a true dragon, possessing not just the form, but also the actual dragon's might. At this moment, atop the continent, a colossal purple-golden dragon, over 100,000 zhang in size, stood proudly, with the continent beneath its feet serving as a mere backdrop. Behind the purple-golden dragon, two massive dragon wings, each over 100,000 zhang long, unfurled. Then, with a flap of its wings, the dragon soared into the sky, reaching several million zhang above the continent. At that height, the purple-golden dragon let out a furious roar, extending its two gigantic claws. From each claw, purple-golden dragon patterns shot out, infused with high concentrations of spiritual energy. What was most astonishing, however, was not the destructive power within the dragon patterns, but the fact that with each pattern launched, it transformed into a purple-golden dragon in midair. Though each dragon was only about 10,000 zhang in size, Everyone possessed power that even Earth's sovereign experts feared. A total of 13 dragon patterns were unleashed, marking Lin Dong's current limit. This was Lin Dong's modified Azure Sky Dragon transformation technique. In the past, he could only transform himself into a dragon, but now, he could manifest dragon patterns he created into dragons. Although the number was far fewer than before, each dragon pattern was as powerful as tens of millions of the previous ones. The 13 purple golden dragons hovered around Lin Dong. Then, with a flap of his dragon wings, their enormous forms charged toward the continent below. The 13 purple golden dragons followed suit, roaring as they soared. In midair, Lin Dong struck with his massive dragon claws, and the 13 dragons mirrored his actions. Under everyone's watch, Lin Dong and the 13 dragon claws simultaneously slammed into the continent. The terrifying force shattered the surrounding void, and the continent was completely pulverized into dust. Indeed, no one was mistaken. Had Lin Dong merely reduced the continent into fragments of rock, it would not have been as shocking as the scene before them. At that moment, all the experts realized that the desolation technique Lin Dong had used earlier was not meant to desolate the surface of the continent, but to completely annihilate its internal structure. The entire interior of the continent, already turned desolate by Lin Dong, was now shattered into dust by the external impact. This kid, how is he so desolate? Below, Fan Yunzi's expression was filled with astonishment. He stared at the continent now reduced to dust, as well as the dozen purple golden dragons circling in deep space. He quickly patted Elder Song's shoulder beside him, a hint of reproach in his tone. Why didn't you introduce me to the martial realm earlier? This kid has potential. After speaking, Fan Yunzi turned to his grandson beside him and said, "You need to stick close to Lin Dong in the future. It will definitely benefit you." "Come on, you were just underestimating him," the young man retorted, giving Fan Yunzi a sideways glance, leaving the latter momentarily speechless. Ling Qingzhu, watching the scene above, couldn't help but smile, though she was accustomed to it. After all, this wasn't the first time Lin Dong had done something so unbelievable. The many experts of the Lower Dimension Alliance also admired Lin Dong in silence. The Great Thousand Alliance Master, Nan Tianzi, wore a smile, while Yuan Chang behind him was slightly moved. "Heh, Nan Alliance Master, is this the Lin Dong you mentioned before?" A faint chuckle came from behind. An elderly figure holding a fire lamp appeared behind Nan Tianzi. This was the undying lord of the graveyard of 10,000 tombs. "Yes, the future path of the lower dimensions depends on them," Nan Tianzi replied. "That Xiaoyan hasn't shown up yet," the undying lord remarked. "Heh, Xiaoyan seems to have been in seclusion in the ancient Sky Dragon clan for years. No one knows when he will emerge." The Western Heaven Palace Master, not far away, smiled and said, "If he were here, I'm sure the Great Thousand Assembly would be even more spectacular." Meanwhile, on another side, the third elder of the Ice Spirit clan and a young man stood facing the wind. "See? This is the one the Grand Elder was talking about. Do you think anyone in the entire Ice Spirit clan can compare to him?" the third elder asked. "Ice Meteor may be the strongest of the younger generation, but I dare say, he's far behind." Though reluctant, the young man replied, "The Grand Elder's plan is indeed ahead of its time. He will definitely become one of the greatest figures in the history of the Ice Spirit clan." "Tell Ice Meteor about this later," the third elder said. "Grand Elder, isn't that a bit inappropriate?" the young man asked. "What's inappropriate? Ice Meteor is young and full of pride. He should be stimulated. It's all for the best." Meanwhile, in the western sky, Little Drum King watched in disbelief as the continent to the east gradually turned to dust and scattered into the air. His fists clenched tightly. The elder with the crutch had intercepted the continent, destroying a third of it. And the part he destroyed was massive, about half the size of the original continent. He had thought victory was in the bag, but to his surprise, Lin Dong obliterated the entire continent, reducing it to powder. The gap in power was so clear even an idiot could see it. This contest was a win for Lin Dong. In the eastern sky, the 13 massive purple golden dragons slowly dissipated, and along with them, The largest purple-golden dragon that Lin Dong had transformed into also faded away. When Lin Dong's figure reappeared, the heavens and earth erupted in a wave of intense cheers. This kid. I should have stacked twice the power on him. No, 5 times the power. In the void, the leader of the true dragon clan glanced down at Lin Dong, curling his lips. His figure gradually sank into the darkness and disappeared. After all, his objective had already been achieved. High in the sky, 3 figures descended rapidly. It was Lin Dong and his 2 companions. Each of them had completed the Qingyan Qian's trial, with the only difference being the extra destructive damage. It seems this generation of young people is even more talented than I had expected, said the elder with the crutch, smiling as he landed. He gave Lin Dong a respectful salute, then in a flash of movement, leapt off the Great Thousand Arena. He knew that his involvement was now over. You won. Though Little Drum King was unwilling, he had to admit that Lin Dong's strength far surpassed his own. He was not a petty person, so he also saluted Lin Dong before leaving the arena. Watching them leave, Lin Dong didn't say much. However, he could sense the magnanimity of the powerful figures in the Great Thousand World. Lin Dong, young brother, well done. A voice came from behind. Lin Dong turned to see Qingyan Qian walking toward him. Senior, Lin Dong greeted, cupping his hands. He knew that Qingyan Qian was far more powerful and older than he was. This is your reward. With a wave of his hand, Qingyan Qian sent a scroll, glowing with holy light, toward Lin Dong. It was the blueprint of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign. Lin Dong caught the map and again cupped his hands. The Upper Earth Sovereign, I will certainly slay an Earth Sovereign. Heh, young brother Lin Dong, no need for such formalities, Qingyan Qian smiled. Consider this map as a gift from the primordial divine clan. We only hope that when the extraterritorial evil clan strikes against the Great Thousand World in the future, your martial realm will become a pillar to defend against them. I will do my best. My lower dimension was once attacked by the extraterritorial evil clan, Lin Dong replied. Qingyan Qian had already known this. He patted Lin Dong's shoulder. I know. With that, Qingyan Qian turned and walked toward the center of the Great Thousand Arena. Only 2 of the 12 blueprints had been auctioned off, and there was no time to waste. There were still even more important items to be auctioned after these blueprints. Seeing Qingyan Qian leave, Lin Dong also moved, returning to where Ling Qingzhu and the others were standing below the Great Thousand Arena. Impressive. You really got your hands on a relic blueprint, Fan Yunzi said, quickly approaching Lin Dong with a broad smile. From now on, I'm sticking with you. Elder Fan, no need to be so polite. We're already allies, Lin Dong replied with a smile. Well, earlier I was just a bit impulsive, Fan Yunzi said, slightly embarrassed. I didn't take it to heart. I had forgotten about it until you mentioned it, Lin Dong said with a smile, then took Ling Qingzhu's hand, spun around, and began walking away from the Great Thousand Arena. We're leaving, Lin Dong called to Elder Song and the others behind them. But the Great Thousand Assembly has only just begun, Fanling said, a little confused. No matter how precious the items auctioned next are, they no longer concern us, Elder Song answered for Lin Dong. The rules of the Great Thousand Assembly are that each person or force can only take 1 item. Oh, I forgot about that strange rule, Fanling recalled. Should we not stay and watch the next round of the auction? There are some rare items up for bid, Fan Yunzi suggested. Elder Fan can consider staying to watch. Then what about you? Fan Yunzi asked. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong flipped his hand, and the map of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign's relics that he had just obtained appeared in a flash. Next, we'll return to the martial realm and hand this blueprint over to the mapping department. Let them calculate the location of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign's relics in the Great Thousand Worlds. A month later, we will set off. What if other forces want to intervene and claim a share? Fan Yunzi asked with some concern. After all, he knew very well how tempting the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign's hidden treasure was. If other forces, no weaker than the martial realm, came to compete, it would not bode well for them. Claim a share? Lin Dong sneered coldly upon hearing Fan Yunzi's words.